Okay, here's part 2 of the video lecture for domestic violence. In class, since we've missed so much class because of weather, I have some videos and some other things that I was going to show. I will still do that. I'll probably video them here and kind of let you watch them, or send you to the proper links so you can look at them on YouTube or online. So I'll still have those for you. But I want to talk now about something a little different. Stalking. We can kind of talk about this to some extent when we talk about domestic violence. So, what is stalking? I usually, again, ask the girls, because girls are usually the victims of stalking. In a class of about 25 or 30 people, usually half of them being male, half of them being female, I'll have at least 2 or 3, sometimes 4 or 5 girls that will raise their hand when I ask if they have ever been stalked. And certainly I don't ask for details in class, but it is a serious problem. While legal definitions of stalking vary from one jurisdiction to the next, a good working definition that you'll want to have is this. Stalking is hard to define, but we're going to try it. A course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to feel fear. Stalking is serious, it's violent often, and it can escalate over time. Stalking is not always violent, but it often ends up being that way. We'll go back to that for a second. And I'll share a story of stalking. I had a student not too many years ago at West Virginia State University, and she was probably, I'm going to guess she was probably 20 years old, and she was in one of my upper level sociology classes that I taught. And she came up to me after class, the first day of class, and explained to me that she, was having a situation with a man who was following her to class. He was showing up at all of her classes, sometimes coming into the classroom and sitting down with her and just staring at her. Walks by the doors of her classrooms. She worked at the mall, at the town center mall, and he would follow her to work. And I can't remember what store she worked at, but he would stand outside of her place of work in the mall and just stare at her for hours. Never talk to her, never address her. It was really strange, and she felt weird about it, and you can imagine why. He would follow her to her car at night when she parked at the mall. He would follow her home and would stare through her window from the street. And she had talked to the police, and the police basically had said, well, if he's not threatening you and he's on public property, there's really not much we can do. But she had reason to feel fear. And sure enough, this guy did enter my classroom, and he sat down, and I asked him to identify who he was, because I knew he wasn't a student, and he just quietly got up and left. And she felt really upset about that, and you can understand why that might be the case. So in her case, it wasn't violent, or at least it didn't start that way. And I'm not sure what happened, because after my class, I've certainly lost contact with her, and so I'm not sure what happened there. But it can be very scary. Okay, you have some things to fill in here. 3.4 million people over the age of 18 are stalked each year in the United States. 3 in 4 stalking victims are stalked by someone they know. Typically, it's an ex-lover, an ex-husband, significant other, romantic interest from the past. 30% of stalking victims are stalked by a current or former intimate partner. 10% of stalking victims are stalked by a stranger. So it can happen. There are cases like, if you guys are too young to remember, but celebrities like Jodie Foster, she's an actress, had someone stalking her she didn't know. David Letterman, he hosted the David Letterman show on television. He had a stalker, someone he didn't know, who was following him, and I think eventually broke into his home. If I'm not mistaken, I'll have to verify that, but I'm pretty sure of that. People aged 18 to 24 experience the highest rate of stalking. So I'm addressing the young ladies in my class at this point. You are entering, if you're not there, that age group where you are at the highest risk, especially ladies between the ages of 18 and 24. 11% of stalking victims have been stalked for 5 years or more. Now, men can be stalked as well. That can happen. I have a story that I'll spare you here on the video, but I've had, working in prisons, I had an inmate who stalked me, And I had a student, a former student from years ago, who actually stalked me, both females. So it can happen to where men can be the victim as well. 46% of stalking victims experience at least one unwanted contact per week. 1 in 4 victims report being stalked through the use of technology. This is the way it's going, and I see this again working in the prison system and seeing what inmates come to prison for. It's not like they're following you around anymore as much. They can use email, instant messaging, Facebook, GPS. I talked to an inmate who was a stalker, and he told me that he just randomly went to Facebook and found a picture of a girl. She was like a friend of a friend of a friend or something, and he just thought she was pretty, and he just decided he was going to just kind of start following her around online, and essentially went to her Facebook page. I guess she didn't have her privacy settings set to private, but he was able to access her name, her pictures, her information, where she lived. She had posted her cell phone number as well, as I guess some people will do that on Facebook. I don't suggest that at all. And was able to basically figure out where she lived and started calling her phone. And before she knew it, this guy had been showing up at her house and was looking into her windows, and eventually broke into her home and stole a bunch of items, started leaving her notes, candy, roses, and when she was weirded out by it and basically confronted this guy and said, "Stop, this is not welcome. I am married. I don't want this. I don't know you." Then it turned violent, and he actually assaulted her. Video, digital cameras, listening devices, you can use your imagination on these, but it happens, and it has happened quite a bit. So they're going high tech. Stalkers are using technology more and more. Some things that stalkers do: they follow you, they show up wherever you are, they send unwanted gifts, letters, cards, or emails. They can damage your property. They monitor your phone calls, your computer use. Like I said, they use technology a lot. Another stalker I dealt with, actually, he was at there was a softball tournament in Buffalo, West Virginia, and all the cars, the parents and the coaches, they park in this big field. And I've been there, so I know what that area is like. And this guy literally walked over to a car, opened it up because it was unlocked, and this woman had her GPS set to home, so he hit home, drove her car somehow. I don't know how he got the keys, but drove her car to her home, went through her garage, went through her stuff, stole a bunch of stuff, pictures, things of that sort, drove her car back, parked it in the same spot, and this woman never knew that he had been in her car and had gone to her home, and he began stalking her that way. People post information, they can spread rumors about you online incessantly. They track you, they try to control you, and it can be very frightening. The impact of stalking on victims. I'm going to adjust my camera just a little bit there. There we go, I think it's better. 46% of stalking victims fear not knowing what will happen next. I'll let you read this. You can pause this video too if you need to jot some of this down. I want to kind of pick and choose a few of these. A lot of the victims, 29% of stalking victims, fear that the stalking will never stop. 1 in 7 stalking victims move. They actually physically move as a result of their victimization. It also creates a lot of other problems like anxiety, some mental health problems specifically, depression, insomnia, social problems. These mental health problems and other physical problems are much higher among stalking victims than they are for others in the general population who are not victims of stalking. If you are being stalked, you may feel fear of what the stalker will do. It really makes you feel vulnerable. I mean, victims feel unsafe. They're on edge. They don't know what will happen next. They can feel anxious, tense, agitated, hopeless, depressed, overwhelmed. And you can kind of read through these and see some of the problems. A lot of female victims of stalking especially develop eating problems, appetite loss, even overeating. Post-traumatic stress kind of things like having flashbacks, disturbing thoughts, reliving frightening events that come about by virtue of being stalked. They may feel confused, frustrated, or isolated because others don't understand why they're so afraid. Back to domestic violence a bit, just to kind of finish this off. 1 in 4 women, or 25% of women, have experienced domestic violence during the course of a lifetime. And I have the sources on there. You can kind of see that too if you want to. Make sure my camera's getting it all. Yep, it is. Estimates range from almost 1,960,000 incidents of violence against a current or former spouse, boyfriend, or girlfriend to 3 million women who are physically abused by their husbands or boyfriends every year. There used to be a billboard like in Jefferson, like between St. Albans and South Charleston on Route 25, that says something to the effect of 1 in every 3 women will be a victim of domestic violence at one time or another. So 1 in 3. So think of all the women that you know, ladies and gentlemen. 1 out of every 3 will be victimized by domestic violence, according to statistics in this country. Women accounted for 85% of intimate partner violence in terms of victimization. Men for approximately 15%. Now, those numbers probably aren't incredibly accurate because, again, there are cultural reasons why men don't report being victimized by domestic violence. Guys are afraid that they're going to get made fun of. The police are going to laugh at them. What are their buddies going to say when they go to the police and say, yeah, my girlfriend's beating me up. Please arrest her or do something. So a lot of this, especially for guys, when males are victimized, we just don't report it because it's embarrassing. And we just don't want to deal with that. Between 600,000 and 6 million women are victims of domestic violence each year. And between 100,000 and 6 million men, depending on the type of survey used to obtain the data. So the data and the statistics are somewhat inconsistent, but at any rate, we're talking about a lot of victims of domestic violence. And you have some of the sources on there that you can see that. Women between the ages of 20 and 24 are at the greatest risk of non-fatal intimate partner violence. So again, ladies, you're not there quite yet, but you're heading into that age group where you will be at the highest risk of being victimized by domestic violence. Between 1993 and 2004, intimate partner violence on average made up 22% of non-fatal intimate partner victimizations against women. That same year, intimate partners committed 3% of all violent crimes against men. Women of all races are about equally vulnerable to violence by an intimate partner. There are a lot of stereotypes out there about violence. One of the biggest stereotypes in the social sciences revolves around the fact that somehow African Americans are more prone to violence and aggression than are Caucasians or Hispanics, and that's simply not true. And there are a lot of sociological reasons for that we could discuss, but we won't. But the idea is, like I said at the beginning, with domestic violence, it is almost equally represented across all social strata. Race, ethnicity, income, socioeconomic status, religious beliefs, political persuasion, even sexual orientation. You have incidents of domestic violence that occur in homosexual relationships as well. And almost done. Intimate partner violence affects people regardless of income. There you're seeing it. However, people with lower annual incomes are at a 3 times higher risk of intimate partner violence. So that is one of the areas that's kind of skewed. If you're looking at annual incomes below $25,000 a year, then the risk of intimate partner violence does increase significantly. So, and again, we could talk about reasons for that. Maybe people who are not making quite as much are more prone to frustration, disease, illness, which could translate into frustration, which could translate into physical abuse. Again, it doesn't justify it at all, but it might explain it to some extent. 1993 and 2004, residents of urban areas experienced the highest level of non-fatal intimate partner violence. Residents in suburban and rural areas, the countryside, if you will, were equally likely to experience such violence. So, I mean, again, people and crime are concentrated. You have more densely populated areas in cities, in urban areas, which could explain the higher rates of aggression and domestic violence there. And that's it for this part. Thank you.